Have you ever wondered why we suffer? No matter how hard we try to avoid it. Why does pain, loss, and heartache seem to find their way into our lives, even when we think we have everything under control? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the wisdom of one of the greatest minds in history, Buddha. His teachings, simple yet profound, provide us with the ultimate roadmap to end suffering and find true peace. In this video, we'll uncover how the Buddha's most powerful teachings can transform your life. Whether you're struggling with stress, anxiety, or a deep sense of emptiness, this ancient wisdom holds the key to understanding and overcoming suffering. From mindfulness to compassion, we'll explore how these principles apply to our modern lives, and how you can use them to create lasting happiness. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to embark on a journey that has the potential to change everything you thought you knew about life and happiness. And if you're ready to take your first step towards a more balanced, peaceful life, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Buddhist Balance, where we explore the timeless wisdom of Buddhism to help you find clarity and balance in today's chaotic world. You don't want to miss this. Section 1, The Problem of Suffering, Dukkha. The Buddha's journey to enlightenment didn't begin with abstract philosophical debates or lofty ideals. It started with a simple, raw observation: life is full of suffering. The Buddha saw that pain, sickness, aging, and death are inevitable parts of existence, things that no one, no matter how powerful or wealthy, could escape. These are the unspoken truths of our shared human experience. And despite our best efforts, we cannot avoid them. We may try to bury our awareness of suffering, distract ourselves, or pretend it doesn't exist. But as the Buddha so poignantly pointed out, suffering is inescapable, it's part of the fabric of life itself. This is the essence of dukkha, a Pali word that translates to suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or discomfort. But suffering isn't just physical. It's mental and emotional, too. The Buddha recognized that many of our greatest struggles happen inside our minds, what we might call psychological suffering. The anxiety of not being good enough, the fear of losing something we love, or the dissatisfaction with our lives despite material success. All of these forms of suffering are real. And they don't go away just because we close our eyes or distract ourselves with the next quick fix. The Buddha's insight was profound. Much of our suffering arises from the attachments we form with people, things, and even ideas about who we are or who we should be. The universality of suffering. It's easy to dismiss suffering in the modern world. We're surrounded by distractions, social media, entertainment, consumer culture, that often serve to numb our awareness. Yet, despite all these distractions, the deep ache of dissatisfaction persists. We're bombarded by messages that tell us if we just buy this product, achieve that goal, or attain that social status, we'll finally be happy. But even when we reach those goals, we often find that the satisfaction is fleeting, and the longing returns. This feeling of emptiness, the sense that something is missing even when we seemingly have it all, is exactly what the Buddha was pointing to. Stress and anxiety are modern-day manifestations of this ancient insight. Despite living in a time of unparalleled technological advancement, we see rising rates of depression, anxiety, and discontent. The Buddha's teachings on suffering couldn't be more relevant today. Take someone like Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple. He built an empire, revolutionized technology, and became one of the richest and most admired people in the world. Yet, despite his success, he faced personal struggles, including health problems and a sense of spiritual emptiness that he later admitted to in interviews. Jobs was often quoted as saying, "Being the richest man in the cemetery doesn't matter to me. Going to bed at night saying we've done something wonderful, that's what matters to me." This reflects the very Buddha's insight: external success, no matter how impressive, does not guarantee internal peace or freedom from suffering. It's not the things we have that ultimately bring lasting happiness, but our ability to relate to those things without attachment. Attachment, the root of suffering. The Buddha's key insight was that much of our suffering is caused by attachment. Our desire to cling to things, people, and even certain ways of thinking. We all want things to last forever. Whether it's a relationship, a job, or our youth. But everything is impermanent. Jobs end. Relationships evolve. And our bodies age. When we attach ourselves to something that's bound to change, we set ourselves up for pain when that change inevitably happens. Take, for example, Muhammad Ali, the legendary boxer. At the peak of his career, he was the most famous athlete in the world, adored by millions for his charisma and his skill. But later in life, Ali suffered from Parkinson's disease, which robbed him of his ability to speak and move freely. The man who once declared, "I am the greatest," was now facing a body that no longer obeyed his will. Ali's story is a powerful example of how attachment to something, even to one's own identity or physical ability, can lead to suffering. His illness wasn't just a loss of physical abilities, it was a loss of the very identity he had attached to, creating deep mental and emotional suffering as well. Similarly, many of us attach ourselves to ideas of who we think we should be. Whether it's the ideal version of ourselves that society promotes, or a specific vision of success. When these ideals are challenged, or when we fail to live up to them, we feel the sting of inadequacy and disappointment. This is another form of dukkha, and it's something we all experience, even though we often don't realize it. Suffering through the lens of modern life. In the modern world, we might think of stress and anxiety as a natural part of life. In a fast-paced society where we're expected to do more, achieve more, and constantly prove ourselves, stress has become almost normalized. We accept it as just another part of adult life. But according to the Buddha, stress is a form of suffering that arises when we become attached to things being a certain way. We feel pressure when we believe that our success, happiness, or self-worth depends on achieving certain goals or maintaining a particular image. When those goals slip away or those images shatter, we are left with frustration, disappointment, and suffering. Look at how Elon Musk, one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, manages immense pressure as he oversees companies like Tesla and SpaceX. Musk has openly talked about how he sleeps in his office and works extremely long hours to ensure his companies thrive. But despite his success, he has also been open about the intense stress and mental toll that comes with his work. He's even stated that at certain points, he thought he might not survive the stress. Musk's story is a modern-day example of how we attach ourselves to the idea of success and accomplishment, and how the resulting pressure can create a constant undercurrent of anxiety and dissatisfaction. Even though he has built revolutionary companies, the tension between his ambition and the personal cost is an illustration of what the Buddha was warning us about. How attachment to success and the desire for control can cause ongoing suffering. The wisdom of letting go. What the Buddha teaches is simple, yet difficult for most of us to practice: letting go. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean we stop caring or trying. It means understanding that nothing lasts forever and that clinging to something that is bound to change or disappear leads to inevitable pain. Letting go, in this sense, is not about apathy but about freedom. It's about allowing ourselves to live in the present moment without the constant anxiety of what's next or what if. This wisdom isn't just theoretical. We can see its effects in the lives of those who have practiced it. Take someone like Nelson Mandela, who, after spending 27 years in prison, emerged with a heart of forgiveness and a determination to rebuild his nation, rather than cling to past grievances or bitterness. Mandela's ability to let go of the pain of his past and his attachment to vengeance was central to his legacy as a transformative leader. His wisdom allowed him to transcend the suffering of his circumstances and turn it into a force for healing. Similarly, when we're able to let go of our attachment to specific outcomes, or even our attachment to identity, we free ourselves from the mental and emotional suffering that keeps us trapped in a cycle of longing, dissatisfaction, and frustration. We come to realize that true peace doesn't come from the things we possess, but from the freedom we find in accepting the impermanence of life and embracing each moment as it comes. In this way, the Buddha's teachings on suffering invite us not to avoid the pain of life, but to transform the way we relate to it. By letting go of our attachments, we can begin to free ourselves from the cycle of craving and discontent, and find a deeper, more lasting sense of peace. Section 2, The Four Noble Truths, Understanding the Cause of Suffering. The Buddha's insight into the nature of suffering didn't just end with the observation that it exists. His greatest gift to humanity was the understanding that suffering has a cause. And once we understand that cause, we can find a way to end it. This is where the Four Noble Truths come into play. These truths are the foundation of all Buddhist philosophy and practice. The Buddha didn't just offer a passive understanding of life's struggles. He provided a clear and actionable roadmap to overcoming them. The truth of the cause of suffering, samadaya craving, aversion, and ignorance. The second noble truth lays out the cause of suffering. According to the Buddha, suffering arises primarily from craving, tanha, aversion, dosa, and ignorance, moha. These three forces work in concert to bind us to the cycle of suffering, and understanding them is key to freeing ourselves. 1. Craving, tanha, the desire for more. The constant yearning for things to be different is one of the fundamental causes of suffering. We crave pleasure, material wealth, status, success, and even love. But no matter how much we get, it never seems to be enough. Just as a fire consumes more and more fuel, our cravings only intensify as we try to satisfy them. This endless cycle of desire is often seen in people's pursuit of success or money. Take someone like Jay-Z, the iconic entrepreneur and rapper. He built an empire in music, fashion, and business. Yet he constantly pushed forward, seeking the next big thing. Jay-Z is arguably one of the most successful people in his field. But he hasn't stopped. Even with immense wealth and recognition, the craving for more seems to remain constant. And that's a hallmark of the Buddha's teaching: desire is insatiable. When we place our happiness in the pursuit of external things, whether it's money, fame, or possessions, we will always find ourselves longing for more. This constant craving creates a cycle of dissatisfaction. 2. Aversion, dosa, just as craving is the attachment to what we desire. Aversion is the attachment to what we don't want. It's the urge to avoid, resist, or fight against things we find unpleasant, uncomfortable, or painful. We experience aversion when we try to push away feelings like fear, discomfort, or loss. In a world filled with challenges, it's easy to become consumed by a desire to avoid suffering. However, the more we fight against things, the stronger our resistance becomes, and the greater our suffering. The Buddha's key insight here is that resisting suffering only magnifies it. Think of Nelson Mandela once again, who, after being imprisoned for 27 years, could have spent the rest of his life hating the system that wronged him. Instead, he recognized that holding on to anger and hatred would only keep him imprisoned. The aversion to his suffering could have consumed him. But instead, he chose to embrace forgiveness. In doing so, he liberated not only himself but also his nation. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching on aversion. By letting go of the need to fight against suffering, we can find freedom. 3. Ignorance, moha. The third cause of suffering is ignorance. But not ignorance in the sense of lacking knowledge. This is ignorance of the true nature of things, ignorance about the impermanence of life, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the fundamental truth that nothing is permanent. We often live our lives as though we are separate from the world around us, holding on to the illusion of control and stability. We act as though the world should conform to our desires and expectations, not understanding that it will change regardless of our wishes. Ignorance keeps us trapped in the cycle of suffering because we are unaware of the reality of impermanence and non-self. A modern example of ignorance in action can be seen in the life of Kobe Bryant, the legendary basketball player. In his early years, Bryant was focused solely on his individual greatness, winning championships, breaking records, and proving himself as the best. However, as he matured, he began to understand the importance of team dynamics, of humility, and of passing the ball. He shifted from the ignorance of believing that his individual success was the end goal, to recognizing the impermanence of personal achievements and the value of contributing to something greater than himself. In the end, he found peace through this deeper understanding. The three poisons of the mind: craving, aversion, and ignorance are often referred to as the three poisons of the mind. These poisons cloud our perception of reality and keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering. They're not just personal vices, they are part of the human condition. Everyone, at some point in their life, has experienced these poisons in action, whether it's the craving for more success, the aversion to pain, or the ignorance of how things truly are. Consider someone like Albert Einstein, whose intellectual pursuits revolutionized physics. Einstein's brilliance led him to understand the deepest mysteries of the universe. Yet, he himself struggled with personal turmoil and inner dissatisfaction. In his later years, he expressed regret about his earlier obsession with fame and recognition. The craving for accolades and validation, Einstein realized, didn't bring true peace or fulfillment. It was only through a deeper understanding of his place in the universe that he began to find a sense of peace. The unseen impact of craving, aversion, and ignorance. Even in today's hyper-connected, achievement-driven world, these three poisons dominate much of our lives. We constantly compare ourselves to others. We crave validation. And we seek to avoid anything that makes us feel uncomfortable. These desires and fears shape our decisions, our relationships, and our actions, often without us even realizing it. Take, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and his creation of Facebook. Zuckerberg's drive to build a social media platform that could connect billions of people was fueled by a deep craving to create something world-changing. But as Facebook grew, so did the pressure and scrutiny surrounding it. Over time, he began to see that despite the immense success of Facebook, it didn't shield him from the effects of societal backlash, privacy scandals, and his own sense of personal dissatisfaction. Zuckerberg's story illustrates how, even when we get what we think we want, whether it's fame, fortune, or recognition, the craving doesn't stop. It only transforms into a new craving. This is the paradox of desire. It feeds on itself, leaving us perpetually hungry for more. The Buddha's second noble truth teaches us that the root cause of suffering is not external circumstances, but the internal mechanisms of craving, aversion, and ignorance. Once we begin to examine these forces in our own minds, we can see how they shape our lives and contribute to our inner turmoil. Understanding the truth of the cause. When we realize that our suffering arises from craving, aversion, and ignorance, we gain the insight needed to start transforming our lives. It's not that we need to eliminate desire or avoid difficult emotions entirely. Instead, the Buddha's teaching encourages us to observe these forces without becoming attached to them. The goal is not to repress or deny our desires and fears, but to understand their impermanent nature and not let them control us. For example, consider Oprah Winfrey, who has had a legendary career filled with tremendous success and recognition. But as she has openly discussed, her early years were marked by deep emotional wounds, including poverty and abuse. Despite her fame and wealth, Oprah has spoken about the realization that true happiness doesn't come from external success or material wealth. Instead, it comes from within, from understanding and accepting her own worth and letting go of the constant craving for external validation. Ultimately, the Buddha's second noble truth asks us to examine the root causes of our suffering, craving, aversion, and ignorance. By seeing these forces clearly, we can start the journey of freeing ourselves from them. It's not about avoiding desire or pushing away discomfort, but about understanding how these mental afflictions create suffering, and learning to live in harmony with the ever-changing nature of life. Section 3, the third noble truth, the end of suffering, Nirodha. After identifying the causes of suffering in the second noble truth, the Buddha's teachings offer us a remarkable promise: there is a way out. This is the third noble truth, Nirodha, the cessation or end of suffering. The Buddha didn't simply leave us with an understanding of why we suffer. He showed us that liberation from suffering is not only possible, but achievable. The key lies in letting go of the cravings, aversions, and ignorance that bind us to the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This cessation of suffering, however, isn't about escaping life or shutting ourselves off from the world. It's about transforming our relationship to suffering, understanding that it is impermanent and not a permanent part of who we are. By shifting our mental and emotional patterns, we can find peace, joy, and clarity, even amid life's inevitable challenges. The concept of nirvana, freedom from the cycle of craving and attachment, Nirodha, or the cessation of suffering, leads us to the concept of nirvana, a state of perfect peace, free from craving, aversion, and delusion. It's often misunderstood as a kind of escapism or detachment from the world. But in reality, nirvana represents the highest form of liberation, freedom from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Take the example of Mahatma Gandhi, a man who, through his leadership in India's independence movement, not only sought freedom for his people but also embodied a profound personal transformation. Gandhi's practice of ahimsa, non-violence, and his commitment to simple living were deeply tied to his understanding that freedom doesn't come from external circumstances but from within. Through surrendering the craving for power, wealth, and worldly attachments, Gandhi found a deep, unshakable peace and clarity. His commitment to non-attachment to material success and his focus on truth and compassion made him a living example of the cessation of suffering in action. Nirvana is not a place or a state that can be obtained through force. Rather, it's the natural outcome of seeing things as they truly are. It is the liberation from our attachments and the peace that comes when we stop chasing fleeting pleasures and avoiding uncomfortable truths. Nirvana is the experience of deep contentment and equanimity, even when everything around us is in flux. The power of letting go, the end of desire and aversion. The cessation of suffering is intricately linked to the practice of letting go. The Buddha didn't teach us to resist suffering but to let go of the desire for things to be different than they are. In our modern world, we often believe that true peace can only be found when we accumulate enough wealth, status, or success. But the Buddha's message was different. Peace comes from the realization that we don't need to hold on to anything. We don't need to hold on to our ideas of how things should be or our attachment to what we have. Consider the life of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote the famous book Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl found himself imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, facing unimaginable suffering and loss. Yet, despite the horrors he endured, Frankl discovered that his inner freedom was not dependent on external circumstances. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Frankl's ability to let go of his attachment to survival, and to focus instead on finding meaning even in suffering, is a powerful example of the Buddha's teaching on the cessation of suffering. Frankl's ability to cultivate inner peace in the most dire of circumstances illustrates that true liberation doesn't come from escaping pain, but from understanding and accepting it without clinging to it. It's the freedom to experience life fully, with all of its joys and sorrows, without being controlled by the desire for things to be different. Living in the present moment. One of the central aspects of the cessation of suffering is the practice of mindfulness. The ability to be fully present in each moment without judgment or attachment. By learning to observe our thoughts, emotions, and experiences without getting lost in them, we create space between ourselves and the constant fluctuations of the mind. This allows us to experience life as it is, free from the need to manipulate or control it. In his later years, Bruce Lee, the martial arts icon and philosopher, often spoke about the power of being present. His famous quote, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own," reflects this mindset of living fully in the moment, without attachment to any particular outcome or expectation. Bruce Lee's approach to life was rooted in the principle of simplicity and presence. To focus on the present moment, to let go of distractions and judgments, and to be at peace with what is. By being fully present, we can begin to break free from the cycle of craving and aversion. When we stop projecting into the future or dwelling on the past, we can experience the world as it truly is, without the distortions created by our desires and fears. The role of compassion and wisdom. Another crucial aspect of the cessation of suffering is the cultivation of compassion and wisdom. The Buddha taught that true peace isn't found in isolation or withdrawal but in engaging with the world from a place of wisdom and loving kindness. When we act out of compassion, we free ourselves from the self-centered craving and aversion that perpetuate suffering. Compassion doesn't mean sympathy or pity, but a deep, authentic desire for the well-being of all beings, including ourselves. Dalai Lama, one of the most prominent spiritual leaders of our time, is an exemplary model of this integration of wisdom and compassion. His life's work has been dedicated to advocating for human rights, peace, and compassion, not just for his own people, the Tibetans, but for all of humanity. In his teachings, he often emphasizes that inner peace and compassion for others are the keys to breaking the cycle of suffering. His life demonstrates that when we extend love and care to others, we not only heal the world but also heal ourselves. The Buddha's path to the cessation of suffering is therefore not just an individual practice, but a communal one. It involves actively cultivating compassion for others and developing the wisdom to understand the impermanent nature of all things. The more we cultivate these qualities, the closer we come to the cessation of suffering, the end of suffering in the world today. In today's world, the cessation of suffering might seem like an impossible ideal. With the constant stress of modern life, the pressures of social media, and the endless demands of work and family, It often feels like there's no way to escape the grind. Yet, the Buddha's teachings are as relevant today as they were 2,500 years ago. Take someone like Malala Yousafzai, who survived a brutal attack by the Taliban and went on to become a global advocate for education and women's rights. Despite the incredible suffering she experienced, Malala's ability to forgive and turn her suffering into a force for good exemplifies the Buddha's teaching on the cessation of suffering. Her resilience shows us that even in the face of extreme hardship, we can find peace by letting go of anger, attachment, and the desire for revenge. Ultimately, the Buddha's promise is that the cessation of suffering is not just for the elite or the spiritually advanced, it is available to all of us. By practicing mindfulness, letting go of attachment, cultivating compassion, and embracing the impermanent nature of life, we can experience true freedom. We can end the cycle of craving, aversion, and ignorance, and find peace amidst the inevitable ups and downs of life. In this way, the third noble truth teaches us that suffering is not something we need to endure passively. It is something we can actively transform. By understanding its root causes and committing to a path of awareness and compassion, we can step off the endless cycle of suffering and into a life of peace, wisdom, and joy. Section 4, the fourth noble truth, the path to the end of suffering, Magga. The Buddha's teachings offer not just a diagnosis of our suffering, but also a practical path to end it. This is the fourth noble truth, the Magga, or the Noble Eightfold Path, which provides us with a structured approach to living a life that is free from suffering. The Eightfold Path is a set of principles that guide us towards ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. It's not just a set of rules but a holistic way of life that leads to the cessation of suffering, and ultimately, to enlightenment. In this section, we will explore the Noble Eightfold Path in detail, seeing how each part works together to help us transcend the limitations of our desires, aversions, and ignorance. This path is a journey, a gradual process of transformation that requires patience, mindfulness, and consistent practice. Right understanding, samadhi, seeing things as they are. The first step on the Noble Eightfold Path is right understanding or right view. This means seeing things as they truly are, understanding the nature of suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path that leads to its end. Right understanding isn't just intellectual knowledge, it's a deep, experiential wisdom that arises from insight into the impermanent, interconnected nature of life. For example, consider the story of Albert Einstein, whose groundbreaking work in physics revealed the profound interconnectedness of the universe. Einstein's insights into the nature of space, time, and reality showed him that the universe was far more complex and dynamic than he had ever imagined. His ability to see the world in a new way mirrors the kind of right understanding the Buddha spoke of. An understanding that challenges conventional views and reveals the true nature of existence. Einstein's deep awareness of the impermanence of everything allowed him to embrace life's mysteries with humility and curiosity, rather than attachment or aversion. In practical terms, right understanding involves understanding the Four Noble Truths and applying them to our lives. It means seeing the causes of suffering and understanding that they arise from attachment, ignorance, and craving. With this understanding, we can begin to let go of our attachments to things that are transient and accept the impermanent nature of life. Right intention, Sammasankappa, the intentions behind our actions. The second step on the path is right intention or right thought. This is about the mental attitude that underpins our actions. It involves developing intentions that are rooted in kindness, compassion, and wisdom. Right intention isn't about simply following rules or doing the right thing. It's about cultivating a mindset that seeks to relieve suffering, both for ourselves and for others. Consider someone like Mother Teresa, who dedicated her life to serving the poor, the sick, and the dying. Her actions were driven by a deep compassion for others, and she lived her life in service to alleviating suffering. But what set Mother Teresa apart was not just her actions, it was the intention behind them. Her work was motivated by love and compassion, rather than by a desire for recognition or reward. Her right intention guided her in choosing a path of selfless service. And this is what made her efforts so impactful. In our daily lives, right intention involves cultivating thoughts that are aligned with peace, kindness, and generosity. It's about setting intentions that promote well-being and harmony rather than greed, hatred, or ignorance. If our intentions are grounded in the right motivations, our actions naturally follow in a way that contributes to the cessation of suffering. Right speech, Samavaka, speaking with integrity. The third step is right speech, which refers to speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully. Our words have immense power, whether we realize it or not. They shape our relationships and influence our thoughts and emotions. Right speech means refraining from lying, gossiping, speaking harshly, or engaging in divisive language. Instead, it involves communicating in ways that promote understanding, compassion, and unity. Consider the example of Martin Luther King Jr., whose words inspired a generation to pursue justice and equality. His speeches, such as the famous "I Have a Dream" address, were not only eloquent but deeply rooted in truth and compassion. King used his speech to uplift others, challenge injustice, and inspire collective action. His example shows us how right speech can serve as a powerful tool for social change, and how words, when used correctly, can heal and unite. In practical terms, right speech means choosing our words carefully, avoiding speech that harms others or reinforces negative emotions. It's about being truthful, but also speaking with a heart full of kindness and respect. Whether in our personal relationships or in the broader social sphere, the way we communicate can either contribute to suffering or promote peace. Right action, Sammakamanta, ethical conduct in our actions. The fourth step is right action, which is about living in accordance with ethical principles and acting in ways that promote the well-being of others. This includes refraining from actions that harm others, such as killing, stealing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. Right action involves engaging in behaviors that are beneficial, moral, and constructive. A modern example of right action can be seen in Malala Yousafzai, who, after surviving a horrific attack by the Taliban, dedicated her life to advocating for girls' education and gender equality. despite the personal risks and challenges she faced. Malala's actions were guided by a deep ethical commitment to justice and equality. She chose to act in ways that promoted peace and dignity for others, even at great personal cost. In our everyday lives, right action involves making decisions that are aligned with our higher ethical values. It means acting with integrity, avoiding actions that harm others, and striving to do good in the world. Whether it's helping a neighbor in need, volunteering, or making ethical choices in our work. Right action creates positive ripple effects that contribute to the cessation of suffering. Right livelihood, samajiva, choosing a life that benefits others. The fifth step on the path is right livelihood, which involves choosing a profession or career that is ethical and does not cause harm to others. In today's world, right livelihood might involve choosing work that is aligned with one's values and contributes to the welfare of society. It means avoiding occupations that harm others or exploit the environment, such as dealing in arms, drugs, or unethical industries. For example, consider someone like Greta Thunberg, the environmental activist who has worked tirelessly to raise awareness about climate change. Her choice to dedicate her life to environmental advocacy is an example of right livelihood, a way of living that contributes positively to the planet and its inhabitants. Her work, though difficult and often controversial, aligns with her ethical principles of sustainability and responsibility. Right livelihood calls us to find work that not only supports our material needs, but also reflects our deepest values. It's about creating a life that benefits both ourselves and others, and contributes to the collective well-being of the world. Right effort, samavayama, cultivating the right mental habits. The sixth step is right effort, which is the effort to cultivate wholesome mental states and abandon unwholesome ones. It involves vigilance and discipline in cultivating positive habits and thoughts, and in letting go of negative ones. Right effort is about consistency and persistence, making an effort every day to develop qualities like patience, generosity, mindfulness, and wisdom. A great example of right effort can be seen in the life of Serena Williams, the tennis champion. Her success isn't just the result of natural talent. It's a reflection of years of consistent effort, discipline, and mental fortitude. Serena has spoken about the countless hours of practice, the challenges she's faced, and her continual effort to improve and evolve as a player. Her example shows us that right effort is about consistent, focused work towards our goals, whether they're personal, professional, or spiritual. In our own lives, right effort means making the effort to develop positive mental habits, working consistently on our personal growth, and striving to act in ways that align with our values. It's about persevering through challenges and remaining committed to our path, even when things get difficult. Right mindfulness, samasati, being present in each moment. The seventh step is right mindfulness, which is the practice of being fully present in the moment. It involves cultivating awareness of our body, feelings, thoughts, and actions without judgment. Right mindfulness allows us to see clearly the patterns in our behavior and thoughts, and helps us become aware of the triggers that lead to suffering. Consider the life of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master who has popularized mindfulness practices around the world. Through his teachings and writings, he has shown how the practice of mindfulness can help us live more fully in the present, reduce stress, and alleviate suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh's life exemplifies how right mind fullness brings clarity and peace to everyday life. In our own lives, right mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment without distraction or judgment. It's about noticing the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise in our experience, and being able to respond with awareness rather than reacting out of habit or conditioning. Right concentration, samasamadhi, developing deep focus. The final step is right concentration, which involves developing the ability to focus the mind through meditation. Right concentration is the practice of cultivating deep states of mental clarity and calm, which allow us to see the true nature of our thoughts and emotions. An example of right concentration is seen in the life of Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, who was known for his ability to concentrate deeply on his work and vision. His focus on creating innovative products and building a revolutionary company was driven by a deep sense of purpose and concentration. While Jobs' approach was not explicitly spiritual, his ability to focus on his work in such a dedicated way reflects the kind of mental discipline that the Buddha recommended for cultivating wisdom. Right concentration involves developing the ability to focus the mind and reduce distractions, so that we can achieve greater clarity and insight. Through meditation practices such as mindfulness meditation or concentration meditation, we can develop this skill and bring it into all areas of our lives. The integrated path, a holistic approach to the end of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a series of isolated steps. It's an integrated system that works together. Each part of the path supports and reinforces the others. Right understanding helps us develop right intention, which in turn leads to right speech, right action, and so on. The path is not linear, but cyclical, with each step helping to deepen and enhance the others. Ultimately, the Buddha's path to the cessation of suffering is one of gradual transformation, a journey that involves developing both our inner wisdom and our outward conduct. Through mindfulness, ethical behavior, and mental discipline, we can break free from the cycle of suffering and move towards a life of peace, wisdom, and compassion. In modern times, many people, from spiritual teachers to social activists, show us how the Noble Eightfold Path can be applied to our everyday lives. By practicing these principles, we can create a world that is more compassionate, mindful, and aligned with the truth of existence. Through this path, we can not only end our own suffering but also contribute to the greater peace and well-being of all beings. Section 5, Applying the Buddha's Teachings, Transforming Suffering into Wisdom. The Buddha's teachings are not just a philosophical framework. They are meant to be lived. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path provide us with tools to navigate life's inevitable challenges. But how do we actually bring these teachings into our everyday lives? In this section, we explore how to apply the Buddha's wisdom to modern life, and how these practices can help us transform suffering into a source of strength and insight. Understanding suffering in everyday life. The first step in applying the Buddha's teachings is to recognize suffering when it arises. This may sound simple, but it requires deep honesty and mindfulness. Suffering often manifests as subtle forms of dissatisfaction, like frustration at work, anxiety about the future, or conflict in relationships. These are all examples of dukkha, the universal truth of suffering. Let's consider the example of Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest leaders in history. Lincoln's life was marked by profound suffering, including the death of his children, personal depression, and the immense pressures of leading a divided nation during the Civil War. Despite these challenges, Lincoln used his suffering as a source of growth and wisdom. His ability to empathize with others, his commitment to justice, and his perseverance in the face of adversity all stemmed from his deep understanding of the human condition. Lincoln exemplified the Buddha's teaching that suffering, when met with awareness and compassion, can become a path to transformation. For us, recognizing suffering involves cultivating mindfulness. When we feel overwhelmed by stress or negative emotions, we can pause and ask, what is causing this suffering? What am I clinging to or resisting? This simple act of awareness can help us see the root causes of our struggles and begin to let them go. Letting go of attachment. One of the Buddha's most profound teachings is the idea of non-attachment. This doesn't mean giving up everything we love or detaching ourselves from the world. Instead, it means releasing our clinging to things that are impermanent, possessions, relationships, and even our own identities. Consider the life of Michael Jordan, often regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time. During his career, Jordan was driven by an intense desire to win and achieve greatness. However, after his retirement, he struggled with letting go of his identity as a basketball player. Jordan himself has admitted that his post-retirement life was filled with feelings of emptiness and a loss of purpose. His story highlights the Buddha's insight. When we attach our sense of self to external achievements or roles, we inevitably suffer when those things change or fade away. For us, practicing non-attachment might mean letting go of the need for constant validation, the fear of failure, or the pressure to meet society's expectations. It means learning to appreciate life's impermanence and finding peace in the present moment, rather than clinging to what was or what could be. Cultivating mindfulness in a busy world. In today's fast-paced world, mindfulness is more important than ever. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is the key to breaking free from the cycle of suffering. By being fully present, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, creating space to respond rather than react. A modern example of mindfulness in action is LeBron James, who has spoken openly about how mindfulness and meditation have helped him stay grounded and focused in the high-pressure world of professional basketball. By practicing mindfulness, LeBron is able to manage stress, maintain his mental clarity, and perform at his best, both on and off the court. His practice illustrates how mindfulness can help us navigate life's challenges with greater ease and awareness. Incorporating mindfulness into our lives doesn't require hours of meditation. It can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths when we feel stressed, paying attention to the sensations in our body, or noticing the beauty in small, everyday moments. Over time, these practices can help us develop a deeper sense of presence and peace. Embracing compassion and wisdom. The Buddha's teachings emphasize the importance of cultivating compassion for ourselves and others. Compassion isn't just about feeling sorry for someone, it's about genuinely wishing for their well-being and taking action to alleviate their suffering. Consider the life of Princess Diana, who dedicated herself to humanitarian causes, including advocating for those affected by AIDS and landmines. Despite her own personal struggles, Diana used her position to bring attention to the suffering of others, earning her the nickname, the People's Princess. Her life demonstrates the Buddha's teaching that compassion not only helps others, but also brings meaning and fulfillment to our own lives. For us, compassion begins with self-compassion, treating ourselves with kindness when we face difficulties, instead of harsh self-criticism. From this foundation, we can extend compassion to others, whether through small acts of kindness, offering a listening ear, or working to create positive change in our communities. Finding meaning in suffering. One of the most transformative aspects of the Buddha's teachings is the idea that suffering can be a source of wisdom and growth, rather than viewing suffering as something to avoid. We can see it as an opportunity to learn and evolve. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, is a powerful example of this principle. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl wrote about how he found purpose and hope even in the face of unimaginable suffering. He realized that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can choose how we respond to them. Frankl's philosophy aligns closely with the Buddha's teaching. By embracing suffering with awareness and resilience, we can find deeper meaning and purpose in our lives. For us, this might mean reframing challenges as opportunities for growth. When we face setbacks, we can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can this experience make me stronger or wiser? By shifting our perspective, we can transform suffering into a catalyst for personal and spiritual development. The role of daily practices. Applying the Buddha's teachings to our lives doesn't require radical changes. Small, consistent practices can have a profound impact. Here are some practical ways to integrate these teachings into your daily life. 1. Morning mindfulness practice. Start your day with a few minutes of mindfulness. Sit quietly. Focus on your breath, and set an intention for the day. 2. Gratitude journaling. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you're grateful for. This practice helps shift your focus from craving to appreciation. 3. Acts of kindness. Look for small ways to help others. Whether it's holding the door for someone, offering a compliment, or volunteering your time. 4. Reflect on impermanence. Remind yourself that everything in life is temporary, and appreciate the present moment for what it is. 5. Meditation. Practice meditation regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. This helps cultivate mindfulness, focus, and inner peace, transforming our lives one step at a time. Ultimately, the Buddha's teachings are about transformation of our minds, our actions, and our relationships. They remind us that while suffering is a natural part of life, it doesn't have to define us. Through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can learn to navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. By practicing the principles of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, we can break free from the cycles of craving and aversion that perpetuate suffering. We can find joy in the present moment, deepen our connection to others, and live a life of purpose and meaning. The Buddha's teachings aren't just a philosophy, they are a path to a more peaceful, compassionate, and fulfilled way of being. Now that we've explored the Buddha's path to ending suffering, it's time to take these teachings into our everyday lives. Remember, this journey is not about perfection, but progress. Every small step you take towards mindfulness, compassion, and understanding will bring you closer to the peace and happiness you deserve. The Buddha's wisdom is timeless, but it's up to us to live it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to Buddhist Balance. Your support means everything, and it helps us continue sharing these transformative teachings with the world. Drop a comment below, let us know how you're applying the Buddha's teachings in your life. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey. Until next time, may you find balance, peace, and clarity in every step you take. Stay mindful, stay compassionate, and most importantly, stay Buddhist balanced. See you in the next video. Folded hands.